Welcome, 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 welcome again, early morning risers. This is me, Miss Jan, once again with another morning's cup of wisdom. Now tell me, what's in your cup this morning? Please make sure that your cup is always filled with something to take you throughout your day. Well, my cup, as usual, has a little bit of coffee. So what are we going to be focusing on today? Our focus today is on change. You know that change is inevitable. Everyone has to go through some form of changes in their life. You change when you grow from a child into an adult, and all of these stages in life has different types of changes. But some of us don't embrace the change that happens. Some of us don't recognize that change is inevitable. Change isn't something that is always pleasant. Change from one state to the other, whether it is emotional change, physical change, we also have spiritual changes, emotional changes. All of that come with both positive and negative. Now, for some of us, we find it challenging to embrace some of the things that might be negative. But can I tell you that some of what we might see as negative is what is going to take you into that desired place for you to have that desired outcome. So everything will not always be comfortable when we go through change. Some of us will have to change our location in terms of physically where we reside, or it might be changing our job. For those of us studying, it might be changing our school. We might also have to change our friends, change our associations, change of job. All of those are inevitable. Change of expectations. Sometimes our expectations are so large and looming that we become disappointed when it doesn't fall in place the way we are. But when we are ready and open to embrace our change and expect different things to evolve over a period of time, we find that we become less stressed about what it is that's happening that requires this change. Oh, for some of us, we will have to change our relationships. Sometimes we grow up in a certain environment, and these relationships are okay for the position we are in life. But then, if the individuals are not changing with us, they are not evolving. Sometimes we have to make that painful choice of changing the type of relationship. It's not cutting off the individual, but changing the type of relationship that you enjoy with that person. So you might not enjoy that kind of closeness where you share intimate information about self, and not just self, but your circumstances and so on, because not necessarily that the relationship is bad or the individual is bad, but you understand that individual's capacity to bear that kind of things that you always change. When you're young and you're girls together, boys together, there are some things that you can share, you tell each other, and it's okay. But some individuals might not be able to take some of your emotional trauma or even understand some of the physical changes that you are going through or the location change that is required for you. So now you might have to change the quality of that relationship to a different level. So it's all about recognizing that, hey, change is inevitable. There's change in life, and all of us have to go through it. All of us, whether we like it or not, will have to go through some amount of change for our lives to continue. Now, as I was saying, change can be uncomfortable, but sometimes it's necessary. Let's look at Genesis chapter 12. Now, in this chapter of Genesis, we see that One of our forefathers, the great father of faith, Abraham, was asked by God to leave his home country to another country. Some people don't like that change, don't desire that change. But if you stay and resist that change, then you find that you will not accomplish that purpose or that desire that God has for your life. It might turn out negative for you because you didn't walk in that change. You know, sometimes we think that it's going to be uncomfortable if we leave. Yes, it might be uncomfortable, but in the end, we recognize that this desired change is going to be prosperous, profitable, as we saw happening to Abraham. He learned so much on that journey to this distant land, to this, and it brought about so many changes for his people. Now, he took along with him a relative of his. Both their lives changed, but eventually they too had to part in order to preserve their relationship, because after that change, after that moving and traveling together, the families grew, the servants grew, what they acquired in terms of cattle and so on, their possessions grew, and then there become situations that became uncomfortable. There were quarrelings, disgruntledness, and so on. But these are families that travel together. So it's the same thing that I'm saying. Sometimes relationships have to change. And it doesn't necessarily mean that change is negative. It is change that is required in order to preserve that relationship, to preserve the family, so that love can survive rather than your fighting. It's like a home. Your children grow up and so on, and they want to have their own life as adults. But it's hard for them to live in their parents' home, because parents' home still have rules, regulations, restrictions. So in some homes, you can't just do as you want. You're an adult, you go to work, you want to come home, you just want to sleep, you don't want to do any chores and so on. It's perfectly okay if you're living on your own, but then you live with family, might be your parents or some other relative, an aunt and uncle and so on. And there are some activities that you have to take part in order for that home to run the way that the owner of the home, or the adults, the senior adult to you in that home, wants it to run. So in order for life to be comfortable and for you not to be at your parents' throat and your parents not to be annoyed with you, you go your separate ways, you move out, you have your own home for yourself. Eventually, same thing is going to happen with your kids. They're going to want to move out. So the relationship type changes, where you now have your own space, so that the relationship can be preserved and you will have less fighting. You will now develop a different level of understanding for each other. So back to the whole idea of embracing change. If we operate in fear, then we won't embrace the change that is inevitable. If Abraham had feared moving out, he wouldn't have acquired all of those possessions that God had promised him. If he had stayed with his nephew Lot in the same place, then his end might have been different. We see later on that the city that Lot chose to stay in when he and Abraham separated was destroyed because of what type of city that was there. We also saw that Lot's family, who did not desire that change, who when Abraham came to get them out, or when they were told to leave because God was going to be destroying that city, those who desired not to go, they were the ones who were destroyed. Even Lot's wife looked back, longing for what she left in the city. She too was destroyed. So I'm saying, when we try to stay in the familiar and not embrace the change that God is bringing us into. We can destroy ourselves, huh? And then we do not fulfill that great desire that we are created to fulfill. So separation is not necessarily something bad. It can be something good. It can be prosperous. It can be good in the long run, not just for self, but for our generations to come. I want us to also look at another aspect of our change. If we try not to embrace our change, what can happen is, as I said before, we limit ourselves. We limit what we can achieve. We limit what we are about to become. For example, those who you're so happy and comfortable with this position or this job or this nation or even this city, that you don't want to move forward, even though when there are opportunities and openings in another area, another community, another job, another city, maybe even another country. What happens is you limit yourself. You become very limited in that situation. We go through physical changes in our bodies. That too, we need to embrace. These type of changes might not be comfortable, but we grow older. That's a natural thing. But we have to embrace it. We can't always be the same way. So we embrace what is happening to us. We adjust to it so that we mature. Because it's maturity that allows us to be accepting of the changes that are occurring around us, occurring in our own life. Embracing change also requires that we embrace changes in others. It often we want to project ourselves on other people and we want them to be similar to us. Of course, that is impossible. And in so doing, some of us don't necessarily accept the changes in others. It might not be what we would want for them, but their situation is different from ours. We can't always dictate, even parents and children. Those relationships, sometimes parents have this idea of who they want their child to become. And maybe at some point the child desired to be that as well. The child was okay with it, but then changes happen, changes come, new perspectives come. And then if you're stuck in that place and keep pressuring that child to be who they said they wanted to be or who you saw them becoming, then you cause rebellion in that home because you're not accepting that, hey, there's a change. And sometimes there's a change too. Your child might desire not to complete a college course because they need a break. Give them the break. Allow them to take the break. You can go through what the outcomes might be, but allow them to take the break. It's not always something that's detrimental. Maybe God is changing their pathway into something different. Or that pathway might just meander for a while to come back to that desired place. Because everything doesn't have to be the way you've envisioned it. If the change comes, go with it. So that in the end, the result will be better for everyone that is concerned. Now, let's also look at the situation, same situation with Lot and Abraham. Suppose they had decided that, hey, let's stay as family. We're families, let's stay. Or Abraham, instead of parting ways and choosing a different city to dwell in, they all decided to go into the same city. If Abraham had gone into the same city with Lot, his outcome might not have been the same. Because, as families, sometimes we don't want to separate because it's like breaking up the family and it doesn't look well. So we keep fighting and so on. So he too, you never know, might have perished in that situation along with his other family members. So what am I saying? Change, as uncomfortable as some of it seem, it is a good thing. Let's look at the whole making of olive oil, a typical oil, or any form of oil, even coconut oil or vegetable oil. If you know what the coconut looks like, it's a nut. It's a hard nut. For you to get the oil from it, you're going to either have to press it or you're going to have to grate it, and it goes through different stages. So it's broken down, it's not in the same state. But then the oil that's produced from it is what we get, and we use it for our various means, whether it is to be the base of a products such as those that are used domestically in the home or for cooking or so on. It has to be pressed, it has to be changed. The olives has to be pressed in order for us to get the oil from it. It has to go through changes, but in the end, these beautiful things come from it. It's the same thing with when we think about metals such as gold and silver. In their natural state, they are beautiful. It has to go through some transformation, some change, in order for us to get this beautiful thing that we see. Even how pearls are formed, it is formed inside of the oyster. Now, it doesn't come out polished and beautiful. It has to go through changes. Some parts have to be rubbed down. And it's the same thing for us as individuals. The change that God is bringing us through in order for us to become like Him is not always comfortable. It's not hunky-dory, happy all the time. There are some hard truths that some of us has to face that we don't want to face, so that we can change in our character, change in our mindset. Sometimes, even thinking about our health, sometimes we have to change, make lifestyle changes in order to become healthy. We grow up eating all of these things and it's good for us. We like our starches, we like our meat. But then when you get older, you recognize that you have to limit the amounts that you eat. And some of us don't want to do that, and then it affects our health. What am I saying? Making changes can be uncomfortable, but it's also a good thing. So we have to make up our minds. What is it we want to do? What wisdom we want to gather from this morning? How are we going to face the changes when it comes to us? Are we going to embrace it? Are we going to run away from it? Are we going to put it on the back burner? Or are we going to make a decision, a conscious decision, to walk in the change, become the change? Because sometimes we have to become that change, because we're influencing others every day. How do we influence others if we do not accept our changes? Or do we influence others positively, because we can influence them negatively? How we influence them positively if we do not accept the changes that are good? Now, if you agree or you want to make a change, I want you to say this prayer with me this morning. Heavenly Father, thank you for reminding me that changes are necessary in this life. Help me, dear God, to embrace the change that you want to give me as an individual, that I might not run away from it, and cause me not to look back so that I will be destroyed because I don't want to move forward in you. Give me the strength, God, to do what is right. Amen. Now, if you've said this prayer with me, I hope you mean it and are intentional about making a change in your life, a change for the better, a change in your circumstances, whether it is to accept that job that is far away from home, or it is to move out of parents' home so that we can have our own space and not just rely on them, or to accept that change that God has been calling you to, whether it is changing your diet so that you're healthier and so on. Whatever you know you are needing in terms of your change, I hope you from today are going to be intentional about it so that you will have a good testimony. Now, I want you to share your views on this video. Write in the comment section whether you agree or disagree, what questions you might have for me, or how can we move forward from there. Or if you've embraced a change and it was good for you or even detrimental, I want you to also put it in the comment section so that others can see it and even me can learn from what you have said. Now, go ahead, have a great day. This is me, Miss Jan, wishing you all the love in the world in embracing your changes. Have a great day. Take a sip with me. See you next time.